Since the WWF War Zone video done pretty well on the channel, I've decided to cover the game's sequel, WWF Attitude. On the surface, Attitude looked like a slightly updated version of Warzone with a new roster and a few new game modes, but there's some interesting stuff going on with this game that you might have missed previously. WWF Attitude did play a lot like Warzone and it also looked pretty similar too, but there are some upgrades under the hood for us to look at today, along with a very intriguing prototype version of the game. Not only do we have the PS1, N64 and GameBoy versions to look at, but we also have the definitive Dreamcast port that, while not selling as well as the other console releases, it's still the version you want to play today if you plan on going back to the game. Let's get stuck in then. This is WWF Attitude.
If you smell what the rock is cooking.
We'll do what we done last time and use the PlayStation version as the main source material for this video. The Dreamcast version may be the best, but it's the PS1 version that most people owned. Attitude was once again developed by Iguana West, but by the time Attitude came out, the company was renamed to Acclaim Salt Lake City, as mentioned in the Warzone video. The game went through a couple of delays. The first one was a standard one where the developers wanted to tidy up the game, and the second delay was due to the passing of Owen Hart, where decisions had to be made about his character in the game. Owen passed away on the 23rd of May 1999, while the game was due to get released on June 3rd, just under 2 weeks later. The PS1 version ended up getting released on August 5th, 1999 in the United States with Owen's character still intact. However, a dedication to Owen was added to the very start of the game. We're going to come back to Owen a little later on when we look at the PS1 prototype, but Acclaim dedicated WWF Attitude to Owen Hart and they changed him to be a good guy or a babyface in the game. He gets cheered by the audience even though he was a heel during the last portion of his career. So let's play a few matches first of all so we can talk about what's new when actually playing the game. We can check out the game modes and stuff like that afterwards. The heads up display has been changed this time around and there's positives and negatives here. The health meter acts like a normal health bar you'd see in a fighting game, meaning it doesn't get replenished this time around. The colour still changes from green to red, and you still need to get your opponent into the red state to perform your finisher, but you can also pull off a signature move when your opponent's health is in the orange state. Your character's name doesn't go through different shades of blue anymore to show your momentum. That's been changed to this little box here beside your name, known as the tie-up meter. The more blue the box, the better chance you have of winning tie-ups. The power meter is here again and it acts the same way as it did in Warzone, and your name will once again flash when the fans chant your name, giving you a damage multiplier and other defensive bonuses to help you win matches. The blue stun meter from Warzone has completely disappeared, so you won't know when you or your opponent is ready to get back up after a beating. So while things are similar to Warzone, there's also enough here to freshen things up a little. I think they definitely made the heads up display a lot easier to understand this time around. You still need to pause to check out your moves, but wrestlers have been given more shared moves this time, so these will be easier to remember. And wrestlers have been given a lot more unique moves that helps make each individual superstar play a little differently. The move complexity score also returns in Attitude, so if you lock up and try a hard move while your opponent tries a hip toss for example, your opponent will win and perform the move, but get that tie-up meter filled up and you'll have a better chance of pulling off your move. Really, that's about it when it comes to the in-ring action. This is an upgraded version of Warzone. If you didn't like Warzone, you're not gonna like Attitude. Moves can still look clunky even though they were motion captured by the Hardy Boys. Character movement is also a little off, and you really need to adjust to the game's timing in order to have a fluid match. Like Warzone, it rewards you for sticking to it and learning a wrestler's moves, so you will be pausing a whole lot again to learn what each guy can do inside the ropes. Once you finish a match, you'll be able to check out some stats about your performance in the ring. This was new, but it was also kinda useless. The presentation of Attitude in comparison to Warzone though is like night and day. You now have full entrances, which in 2021 aren't much to look at, but back then this was quite a big deal. CD quality theme music for over 30 superstars is also included, and at the time, this was also a big deal, seeing as many of the theme songs used in Attitude were not available anywhere else. You need to go into the options though and change the language to teen. This will change some of the theme music to their unedited versions, or in some cases, their actual proper theme song. So for example, X-Pac uses the DX theme when the language is set to everyone.
Break it down.
But change it to teen and you'll get his proper entrance theme. Likewise, here's the New Age Outlaws theme song set on everyone. And here's it set to teen.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
The language setting also makes slight changes to the commentary, allowing Shane McMahon and Jerry Lawler to say more risque stuff on commentary. Jim Ross had health issues around the time Attitude was being developed, so Shane stepped in to provide commentary for the game. Oh, also, while changing the language setting, you need to change the blood setting also. Blood is a new thing in Attitude that wasn't in War Zone, and this kind of thing also got people excited. Before a match begins, wrestlers will also talk a little smack before they lock up. Some of these little taunts can be quite repetitive, but some are also quite amusing.
This D.O. double G lays down for nobody.
XPAC in the place to be! It's either the sky high or it's the lowdown. The choice is yours, punk.
Enough is enough, and it's time for a change. I'll drop the Tennessee Jam on you and send you home early.
You no good, rotten piece of mother Raymond tongue licking piece of go to.
And just the general look of Attitude is much better than War Zone. Characters still have a weird stance and no one's gonna ever say they look amazing, but improvements have been made since War Zone in terms of textures and polygon count. We have a sort of animated audience too, instead of the stretched out blurry image we saw in War Zone, so that's good. And the camera angle has also been shifted over so we get a full look at the arena entranceway. We can see that the stage and sets in Attitude has also been given a much needed upgrade. Speaking of arenas, you have the opportunity to create your own arena in Attitude. It's very limited, but it's still an option, and it's a welcome option at that. All in all, it looks much cleaner than War Zone, and it does look more appealing. Let's look at the matches you can compete in next, because there's a lot to look at here. You've got your standard one-on-one, tag and handicap matches, but then you get lumberjack matches, gauntlet matches, you can play a Survivor Series match, the Royal Rumble matches here, which was exclusive to the N64 in War Zone. Battle Royals are included, war matches, a stable match. You can also have 3-way standard and 3-way elimination matches. In case you're wondering, the war match is a 4-way elimination match with pinfalls and submissions, and a stable match consists of 4 teams of 4 superstars. It's another 4-way elimination match where a stable sends out another superstar when a team member gets pinned or submitted. It's actually one of the more fun matchups in Attitude. Along with all these match types, you can change the win modifiers and match rules. So if you want first blood matches, no DQ matches, finisher only matches, last man standing matches, cage matches, Iron Man matches, hardcore matches, that's all selectable after you pick your superstar. Clearly, the match types have been seriously expanded upon since War Zone, and there's a lot to do here in terms of exhibition matches. We take a lot of this for granted nowadays, but back then it was exciting to have this many options and this much choice. Create a Wrestler makes a return, and just like the match types, everything has been expanded upon here with much more options. Create a Wrestler also shows us how much better the textures are in WWF Attitude in comparison to War Zone. Everything just looks better here. Also included in Create a Wrestler are a few alternate outfits for superstars included in the game, and this is where I want to show you the prototype version of Attitude. There's something in here that got removed from the final version for obvious reasons. Using the prototype version, you can actually create the Blue Blazer. All the parts that make up his outfit are here, and this prototype is so far along that you'll be able to play a game with the Create a Wrestler version of the Blue Blazer, although it will be glitchy. In the normal game, you can hold a shoulder button to change a wrestler's attire, so we can assume that the Blue Blazer gear was going to be an official alternate attire for Owen Hart, and this is something that was removed during the release delay. Some would say it was the right thing to do, others would say it should have been left in as a sort of tribute to Owen. Personally, I think it was the right call removing it, but I can see why others would think it should have been left in. I just thought it was worth showing you guys. It's one of those things your usual clickbaity YouTubers would cover and stretch out to a 20-minute video, but I don't see this mentioned all that much. A user named MattSKX uploaded a video on the subject though, showing which parts need to be selected in order to create the character, so credit to Matt. For those wondering, the Blue Blazer has not been given to Owen as an alternate attire in this prototype either, so if you try to select Owen and hold down the shoulder button, you still don't get the Blue Blazer. Also in Create a Wrestler are masks for Yoda and Chewbacca, it's a bit weird. And you also have face paint for the Insane Clown Posse. The colours of these right here were changed in the final game. And check this out, there's a list of Create a Wrestler templates for the actual superstars included in the game. Some of these will cause the game to crash though, but it's still very interesting to look through. There's also a ton of random templates and I have no idea who these guys are. There's also more mode selections included in the prototype that didn't make the final cut, but some of it is inaccessible. The bio room that was removed from the final game doesn't work in the prototype, but the training room does. Training is the exact same as War Zone, and I'm not sure why this was left out of Attitude. King of the Ring mode was initially called Tournament mode, though it serves the same purpose. There's a lot to explore and find within the Attitude prototype, and I'm sure there's more items in Create a Wrestler that didn't make it to the final game, so hunt it down and have a look yourself. Use Google to find the game. Before I forget, pay-per-view mode lets you make your own pay-per-views, you give it your own arena, its own name, its own list of matches. It's a bit pointless really. Finally, let's talk about career mode before we move on to the N64 and Dreamcast versions. If you thought Warzone had a tedious career mode, then wait till you see this. You can pick a tag career or a singles career. I'll show you singles. Pick your guy and welcome to the grind. You start right at the bottom and you gotta work house shows. Month after month, match after match, you'll slowly work your way up to Sunday Night Heat and Shotgun Saturday Night. You'll then get to compete on Raw's War, and then you can work pay-per-view matches. Along the way, you'll collect the European, IC and heavyweight belts. You'll also have to defend those belts, and say goodbye to your social life if you want to work through this one and gain 100% completion, because it'll take forever. The good news though is that your rewards are much better this time around. You'll unlock around 10 new superstars as you play through the career mode, including Shawn Michaels, Sergeant Slaughter, Chyna, Shane McMahon, and Jerry the King Lawler. You do have to complete career mode more than once to get everything unlocked though, and just like Warzone, it's a bit much to ask nowadays. You're gonna get bored very quickly. Honestly, use a GameShark code and be done with it. It was acceptable to grind through stuff like this back in the day, but I could never bring myself to do it now. If I'm honest, I prefer Warzone's career mode actually. At least you got those little FMV promos before challenge matches. Right, the Nintendo 64 version then, there isn't much to say here. One of the great things about the cartridge release is the fact that authentic theme music is included, so you don't need to put up with the chiptune renditions found in Warzone on Nintendo's console. There's a ton of compression here though, the PlayStation release sounds way better, but it's still great that real theme music is present here.
You're the one who sucks, punk, not me!
You've got that kind of smoother looking presentation here in the Nintendo 64 version, just like Warzone, but keep in mind too that I'm playing these upscaled again, although you will still notice the Nintendo release looking a lot more pleasant. Look at the audience though, they don't move at all. It's a small thing, but it's also noticeable after playing the other releases. All in all, there really isn't a whole lot of difference here, seeing as the music's still intact even though it doesn't sound as good. You can't go wrong with either release, they both play the exact same. If I had to choose one, I'd go with the PlayStation release though for the better sounding entrance themes. Again, they're more or less the exact same game. The Dreamcast version though, that's the one you want to play if you're planning on visiting WWF Attitude again. Released a few months after the Nintendo 64 and PS1 versions, Attitude on Dreamcast has a few things that make it the best version to play today. First of all, it looks a hell of a lot cleaner. I'll downscale the PS1 version to its usual resolution and put it against the Dreamcast, also at the regular console resolution, and you can even see the difference here in the menus. Look at the wrestler photos. If we keep both games looking the way they did when they got released while playing the game, you can see how the Dreamcast version looks superior. You get way more animation in the crowd, the characters look sharper, you get more detailed textures that help make the stages and sets look a lot nicer, you even get more shading and detail in the turnbuckle and rope shadows on the ring mat. Polygon counts have been increased on the wrestlers, but admittedly, characters still look janky overall. Some may say this is simply polishing a turd, but if you're going to go back and play Attitude, this is the one you want to play. If we further polish that turd and upscale the graphics, we get this. This right here is as good as Attitude will ever get. The thing is though, this may be the best version of Attitude, but it's a far cry away from being a great looking Dreamcast game. WWF Attitude on the Sega console was rushed out the gate as soon as possible due to Acclaim losing the WWF license. This was going to be their final WWF game ever released, and they lost the license mere weeks after Attitude on Dreamcast was brought out. Further enhancements could have been possible maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it either, seeing as the ECW Acclaim video games didn't offer much of a visual upgrade over Attitude. Still, this release is very clean. You also benefit from better sound at higher sample rates. You get more visual effects for entrances, and effects used in the other releases look a bit better. It isn't the best wrestling game on Dreamcast. I'd say Giant Graham 2000 holds that distinction. But if you want to play Attitude, play the Dreamcast release. We might as well look at the Game Boy Color version of Attitude, although again I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Now, Attitude on Game Boy Color does try a lot harder than War Zone. You get 20 superstars to pick from here, which is good for a handheld game. You get a couple of extra game modes, and the game itself is much easier to pick up and play, so it's a vast improvement over the previous handheld release, but it's still pretty awful. There's a lot of empty seats in those stands, kinda reflecting the demand for WWF Attitude on Game Boy Color during 1999. You really don't need to play this. WWF Superstars is still the best Game Boy WWF game in my opinion, but with that in mind, Attitude on GBC is still better than War Zone in every possible way. There's a certain charm that WWF War Zone had that Attitude doesn't, and I can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's the pre-Attitude era roster, maybe it's because War Zone was the first 3D WWF game, or maybe I just have more nostalgia for War Zone even though I spent an equal amount of time with Attitude on PlayStation 1. I'll be the first to admit though that these games can be tough to go back to, and really, I thought I could go through another career mode in War Zone, but I got about halfway through it and I gave up. There's absolutely no way I'd finish Attitude in 2021, because the nostalgia wears off quickly and you're left with a clunky and kinda boring wrestling game. The prototype on PlayStation 1 does intrigue me though, and I think I'm going to do some digging into the prototype and see what else can be found. Apart from that, I really don't have any desire to go back to Attitude, and I'd much sooner play any of the Acclaim games found on Nintendo 64. The next WWF game released was WrestleMania 2000 on N64, and it's leagues better than Attitude. We also got the SmackDown games arriving on PlayStation, along with Royal Rumble on Dreamcast, which I'm going to cover in the future by the way. That's a flawed but interesting game for sure. But things got immediately better for WWF video games following Acclaim's departure. Acclaim would move on to ECW next, poor ECW, and 2 further games were released using the same engine. The Legends of Wrestling games were also developed by Acclaim Salt Lake City, and that old War Zone style of gameplay and general look does come through a bit in those games. Fans didn't really care much for Legends of Wrestling either, even though the rosters were extremely good. All in all, Acclaim were firmly destroyed when it came to developing wrestling games as time went on, with most gamers finding the other grapplers much more fun to play. And I think a big problem there is the fact that Acclaim didn't try to evolve when it came to how their wrestling games looked and felt. I did enjoy Showdown Legends of Wrestling and the previous game Legends of Wrestling 2, but I wouldn't say they were my favourite games at all. A much better non-WWF game to play around that time period would be the Def Jam games, and hopefully, if enough people care and enough people want it, I'd like to cover those games in the future too. But that's going to do it for this one. WWF Attitude, it's a Warzone upgrade in every way imaginable, but for some like myself, you might find more nostalgic value in the previous game. There's loads of modes here, there's loads of theme music, the presentation is decent, there's plenty of unlockable rewards, but it just isn't all that fun to play anymore, and you're likely to play a few matches then call it a day. If you played this one before Warzone, you'll probably find it more endearing, but trust me, that endearment disappears very quickly. Thanks for watching this one, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and take care.
If you smell what the Rock... Hey, this ain't Sing Along with the Rock. The Rock says it by himself. It's cooking.